Hey internet. So on my Instagram page about a week ago, I had put a question box on, ask me a question, and I got a whole bunch of questions, got them right here. So I'm gonna go through each one. I had close to 40 questions in total, but then when I started going through them, I narrowed them down and I realized a lot of them were very repetitive. So I'm gonna answer your questions today. If this video gets too long, I'm gonna do it in two parts. So if that happens, just make sure that you watch part 2. And this is going to be uploaded to Instagram and Facebook. So without further ado, first question is, how old should kids start BJJ? So this really depends on your child. Obviously, if they're like 2-3 years old, arguably even a 3-year-old can learn jiu-jitsu, but this depends on the child. A lot of 3-year-olds might not be developmentally there. They might, if they're delayed in speech, or if they're, they have attachment issues, being in a class might be a little bit too overwhelming for them. So this really depends on the child. It depends on the program that you're putting them in. Is the teaching method appropriate for a child that age? So really, you can start teaching a child very young, even through the toddler years, right? If they're constantly seeing you rolling and grappling, they'll grab a stuffed animal and they'll start mimicking you. So that, that tumbling, grappling type of experience is already there. But really, when kids start school, I would say age 5-6, that's when they can really understand jiu-jitsu a little bit better. They're able to kind of follow directions on their own. And jiu-jitsu techniques are always done in steps, right? There's a step 1, step 2, step 3. So if they're able to follow those types of directions, then they're pretty much ready to learn jiu-jitsu. So at my academy, we do have a tiny ninja program. This is for ages 4-6. And kids will learn jiu-jitsu, they'll learn different techniques, and they learn through play. So depending on where you're taking them, if they don't have a learn through play program, maybe their program is a little bit too technical, it might not be right for your child. So this is entirely dependent on your child, where they're at developmentally, and what type of program you're putting them in. So if you are going to put them in a program, make sure you check it out, you ask questions, their teaching method, the duration of the class, what the expectation is there any progression, that type of thing. Question number 2, which martial art is best for my child? So obviously I do Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, so my answer is always going to be Jiu Jitsu is the best martial art in the world for children and adults alike. However, this is also entirely dependent on what need your child possesses, right? So if they're getting bullied at school, or if they lack confidence, or maybe they are very athletic, right? This is entirely dependent on that. So if your child is, if they want to learn to strike, obviously you're not going to put them in jiu-jitsu, because jiu-jitsu is a non-striking martial art. If you want them to get into MMA, get into a little bit more contact, jiu-jitsu is a good way to supplement that, because half of MMA is being on the ground. But again, this is entirely dependent on what exactly you're looking for your child. A lot of the things that jiu-jitsu teaches children is they learn confidence, right? They learn to love their bodies. They learn to accept defeat. They learn that it's okay to lose. They learn how to set goals. And so through that process, right, they learn to overcome obstacles that they're dealing with. So that's why I always say jiu-jitsu is probably the best one. If they're getting bullied at school, right, you want them to be able to walk away from a situation without feeling bad about themselves, instead of getting into a fight. So it really depends on what exactly it is that you're looking for. Jiu-jitsu is all encompassing, right? So it teaches you how to control an aggressive situation. If your opponent is becoming very aggressive, how do you control them without, losing your temper? You learn kind of how to self-regulate. A lot of kids don't know how to self-regulate, right? They throw tantrums and they have meltdowns. And so jiu-jitsu really helps them kind of calm down, breathe, control their breathing, and then, move on from there. So that's why I always say jiu-jitsu is the best. What's the difference between karate, kickboxing, and jiu-jitsu? Surprisingly, I get this question a lot, especially from parents that are coming into our academy. A lot of times they don't really know what they're looking for. They're just looking for some kind of martial art because they have a very active kid, or their kid is getting bullied, or what have you. So I always, obviously I always tell them that jiu-jitsu is always going to be the best. But karate is a stand-up martial art, and I've never really done karate. I've done taekwondo as a child, but karate is stand-up martial art. You're learning different forms or different patterns, or what they call is katas. So you learn different kata, and you are memorizing it and then presenting it to your instructor. And so every belt level that you go to, and correct me if I'm wrong, so if I'm completely butchering this answers and you do karate, just answer in the comments below. But karate is basically that. So you're basically memorizing a bunch of different movements, and every time you move up a belt level, the movements get a little bit more complicated. So that's basically karate in a nutshell. It focuses on striking, punching, and kicking. But once you get to the ground, karate is no longer relevant. So that's karate. Kickboxing is punching and kicking. It's a little bit more intense, right? So you're hitting a pad. Most academies will do non-contact, again, depending on the type of school. If they're a Muay Thai school, obviously you're going to be hitting another person, but a lot of kickboxing programs for children are more focused on hitting a pad. So either they're hitting a punching bag or they're hitting a physical pad that their partner is holding up. So again, it focuses on punching, kicking, doing different patterns, working on form, right, that type of thing. And then jiu-jitsu, of course, is ground fighting. So once a fight gets to the ground, which 95% of the time a fight that starts standing will always end up on the ground. What do you do from the ground? You can't really rely on punching and kicking, especially if somebody's sitting on top of you, right? They might be smothering your face, they might be controlling your arms. That's jiu-jitsu in a nutshell, so it's ground fighting. Next question, what should I look for in a BJJ school? Again, this is entirely dependent on what your goals are, what your vision is for your child, what the needs of your child are. So what I always tell parents is look to see if the program that you're signing your child up for, does it have a curriculum? Is it structured? Is there progression? The length of the program, right? Is it like a short-term thing? Is it like 4 weeks, or is it like more long-term? A more long-term program is going to set your child up for success, because jiu-jitsu takes a while to learn. Nobody learns jiu-jitsu in 4 weeks. That is completely impossible. So programs that are like, oh, your child's going to master jiu-jitsu in like 4 weeks, which surprisingly I have seen before. It's completely bogus. You can't do it. You will just barely be scratching the surface. I think you might learn how to master shrimping in 4 weeks, but that's pretty much it. So you want to look for something that's more long-term. You want to look to see if instructors are trained to talk to children, because just because you have a black belt does not mean that you know how to talk to kids, does not mean you know how to break down a technique so that a child understands it. And children, of course, have different tics, they have different learning abilities, developmentally, not every child is going to be at the same level. So it really is important that you look to see, are instructors trained to teach children? You want to look for a place that does background checks as well. You want to look to see, again, I talked about curriculum, length of term, and then obviously, like, if pricing is important to you, then that's something to consider as well. But at the same time, if you are somebody who price shops and you're looking for the cheapest of the cheap, then you get what you pay for. So if you're, if there's like a more expensive jiu-jitsu school that you go to, ask them why they're so expensive. Maybe they have a curriculum set up, maybe they have additional programs in addition to jiu-jitsu, or maybe they focus a lot more on your child's brain development or character development, right? So all of these things will factor into price. I don't recommend price shopping. Don't look for the cheapest of the cheap, because like I said before, you are going to get what you're paying for. Next question. My child wants to quit BJJ and I don't want to force them to continue. Am I doing the right thing? This is a really good question, because nowadays, and this is going to ruffle some feathers. So this is my personal opinion. If you don't agree with it, I mean, you asked me the question, so this is my answer. I do not agree with parents nowadays who allow their children to dictate what they want to do 100% of the time. So a lot of times we get parents who are like, I don't want to force my kid. They're just not loving it, or I put my kid in swimming and they didn't like it, so I don't want to force them, and so I pulled them out. I mean, I look at jiu-jitsu and every other sport. There are skills, life skills that kids learn. Even if it's a team sport, they learn how to communicate, they learn how to work together as a team, right? They learn how to lose together and win together and work hard together. Individual sports like jiu-jitsu or other martial arts, kids learn how to work hard. They're putting in a commitment, they're working on themselves. These are life skills that kids need in order to grow as a human, especially in our society where, they're going to go out and get a job one day, or they might have to study for a test, or they might have a boss who they don't like and they don't know how to communicate with. So if you're constantly just allowing your child to dictate what they want, they're going to lose out on all of those skills. And so I do not agree with allowing kids to dictate what they want to do all the time. I mean, within reason, of course. But parents, we know what's best for our kids, right? We know that if you have a child that hates reading, you know that reading is really, really important. It's a skill they need to learn in order to survive in our society. You know that they have to do it, whether they like it or they don't like it. Reading and writing. There's some kids that hate writing. They can't even pick up a pencil without crying, right? And they need to learn how to write. Writing is a skill. It's a fundamental skill that every child needs to learn. If kids don't want to go to school, are you going to tell them, okay, sweetie, you don't need to go to school because I don't want to force you? If they don't want to wash their hands after they come out of the bathroom, because a lot of kids don't, are you going to force them to wash their hands or you're not going to make them do it because they don't want to, right? That's an extreme example, but there are so many aspects of a child's life, especially through sport, where they learn a whole bunch of skills. And if you're constantly allowing them to throw in the towel and quit just because they don't like what happened that day, you're not setting your child up for success. So I disagree with parents that allow their kids to make all the choices and all the decisions, of course, within reason. I just don't agree with it. So things to ask your kid if they want, so just going back to this question, if they want to quit jiu-jitsu, find out why they want to quit jiu-jitsu and look for cues. Are they really happy when they come home from class, or are they completely miserable? That drive home when you pick them up, did they have a good time? Are they smiling? Were they sweating? Obviously, getting your kid to class is always going to be a struggle because a lot of times it's after school. They just want to sit and play on their iPads. And when you take their iPad away, of course, every kid never wants to, for that to happen. You take their iPad away, you take their device away, they can't play anymore because they have to go to class. Of course, kids are going to hate that. So I wouldn't look at what happens before class as an indicator of, I don't think jiu-jitsu is right for my child, or whether it's jiu-jitsu or another sport, right? Maybe they're in basketball, maybe they play volleyball, maybe they're in hockey or swimming or whatever it is. I wouldn't look at their behavior before you take them off to their class. I would look at their behavior after. So, or if that's the case, if you're trying to get your kid to class and they don't want to get off the couch because they'd rather be playing Minecraft, give them a chore to do. Be like, okay, you know what, since you want to stay home and you don't want to go to class, maybe you can go do your chore, go clean the bathrooms. And that'll get them off the couch, guaranteed. So, these are just a few tips. I don't agree with just allowing kids to quit. You need to talk to the instructor as well. Let them know, that I don't, my kid's not happy. Is everything okay in class? Watch them in class if you're allowed to stay and watch at their academy and see, are they having a good time? Because again, a lot of kids, they don't even know why they want to quit. They just want to quit because they want to quit. Sometimes there are underlying factors. Maybe the instructor just isn't teaching well, or maybe they keep getting partnered with someone that they don't want to get partnered with. It could be a variety of things. So always just find out why first. Don't just let them make that choice without finding out why, and then go from there. Next question, my kid wants to become a competitor. How should I support them? This is a really good question. If your child wants to get into competing, your job as a parent is to give them high fives, give them hugs, give them thumbs up from the side. You are not the coach, so do not expect your child to come home, bring medal after medal after medal, especially if you yourself do not train jiu-jitsu. You don't know how difficult it is. It's a hard sport, and not just physically, but mentally, it is a very difficult sport. And so when kids go into a competition setting, it's a huge gym they're at, it's a huge event, there's hundreds and thousands of people, there's lots of parents screaming on the side. It's very nerve-wracking. And if you are that parent that gets really disappointed if your kid doesn't come home with a medal, or maybe they didn't perform well, or whatever the case is, I mean, that's not supporting your child. So if your child wants to become a competitor, I would always sit down with them and let them know, okay, you want to become a competitor, that means that you need to go to every single class. It means that you need to pay attention, and there's work involved, right? So let them know what's involved, and then just support them. If they go to a competition, maybe it's their first one, the nerves even get to adults. So even when I compete, sometimes the nerves take over and I just cannot perform when I know I'm a really good competitor, like I'm a really good grappler, but nerves can do that to people. So if your child is somebody who, has a hard time dealing with nerves, your job, again, is just to offer them support, practice with them at home, right? Become more involved in their jiu-jitsu training. And if you yourself don't train jiu-jitsu, get on the mats and train jiu-jitsu. Next question. I don't agree with my kid's coach. What should I do? Well, you should talk to your kid's coach, because how else are you going to resolve whatever the problem is? Send them an email. If they text, send them a text message. Ask to have a sit-down appointment with them so that you can, talk about whatever the problem is, and also listen to what they're saying, right? A lot of times coaches kind of get berated from parents because parents are expecting things to be a certain way, right? They want their child to always get their way. Coaches have a certain way of running their program, running their classes. And so if you're constantly being that parent that, oh no, I want my kid to be partnered with this kid, and I want my kid to get more attention, or why didn't my kid get promoted, or whatever the case is, you need to also listen to what the instructor is saying. They have reasons for running the class the way that they do. And obviously within reason, right? If you have like a crazy instructor who, maybe is really mean to your kid, or picks on them, or right, is just being inappropriate in that way, or they just have bad attitude, then maybe that's not the instructor, or that maybe that's not the school for your child. So obviously look for a school that's in line with your vision and your values and what your goals are for your child. But if you're unable to communicate with them, then I would see that as a red flag. So bottom line, make an appointment with your kid's instructor, chat with them, and listen as well. Next question. My kid is too small. Is jiu-jitsu right for them? Yeah. So a lot of people think that you need to have these big muscles and you need to be really athletic and you need to have like all this cardio training to do jiu-jitsu. That's simply not true. Those things do help, especially when you're an adult, right? Cardio can really help enhance your jiu-jitsu, as I'm recently finding out for myself. But size does not matter in this case. Jiu-jitsu was created for smaller people to defend against larger opponents. If your child is small, they're really gonna learn to love that they're small, because they can get in and out of tight spots really quickly. It's actually a lot harder to roll with people that are small. So rolling is what we call sparring. It's really hard to spar with people that are tiny, because they're so quick and they learn to use their speed to their advantage, and they get in and out of really tight spaces. So it actually becomes a challenge for their opponent. So to answer your question, Size doesn't matter, sign your kid up for jiu-jitsu. Next question, I want my child to lose weight. Is jiu-jitsu gonna help them get there? If you want your child to lose weight, jiu-jitsu might not necessarily help them lose weight per se, especially in a kid's class. But if you want your child to lose weight, I would look at what's going on in your home that allowed your child to become that weight. Are you, as a family, are you leading a healthy lifestyle, right? Kids are gonna eat what parents give them. Kids are gonna do in their spare time what parents allow them to do. So if your child is a couch potato and you guys are eating chips and donuts and burgers and you don't really live a healthy lifestyle, then that's something that you should be looking at, as opposed to relying on just jiu-jitsu or just sports to get your kid more active. You need to lead by example. And maybe parents don't want to hear this, but you really need to lead by example. You expect your kid to be healthy and lose weight. Well, maybe, you need to be doing that together collectively as a family to have a greater impact. And focus on health, right? What are the health benefits that your child needs to see? You still want to have body positivity, right? You don't want them to see that they need to lose weight. Why do they need to lose weight? It's because their digestive system will be a lot better. Their cardio health will be better. They'll sleep better, right? They'll be a little bit more alert during the day. All of these things are things that you should be focusing on instead of, my kid, like, you're fat, I need you to lose weight. So just things to consider. Next question. My child suffers from self-esteem issues. How will jiu-jitsu help? Really good question. One thing that I always tell parents is that kids will learn to love their bodies. So if they're a bigger girl and they've got curves, they're going to learn to love their body because they're going to learn to use their curves to their advantage. If they're a smaller kid, they're going to learn how being small can be an advantage for them. So whatever their body type is, or whatever issues they're dealing with mentally, if it's self-esteem, right? There's always a reason why. Maybe kids are making fun of them because they're short, or kids are making fun of them because, I don't know, they don't like their clothes, whatever. Kids they make fun of each other for a variety of reasons that we don't always understand. But they will learn to love who they are because they'll see what they can actually do with their bodies. So if they learn a takedown, or they're constantly submitting someone, or they're winning tournaments, they'll start to really love themselves, and they'll start to appreciate the time that they put into jiu-jitsu or whatever activities that they're in. So kids also will learn how to lose, right? So when they're training with a partner, they learn how to lose and they learn how to set goals. And in the process of setting those goals, they're learning to deal with different situations, trial and error, right? Mentally, they'll increase their thought process, right? They'll learn how to problem solve on the mats. And in the process of doing that, they really learn to appreciate themselves. In our academy, we make the kids give high fives at the end of every class and say, thank you for training. And when we do that, they feel really appreciated of themselves, that, my partner thanked me for training. We make the kids sometimes give each other compliments because kids need to hear compliments from their peers, right? And so, especially in jiu-jitsu, when maybe you had just a really rough class and you kept getting submitted, or you couldn't escape the mount, they need to hear that positive feedback from their peers. So in the process of all of that and learning how to use their bodies to their advantage, they will really start to love themselves, and that's when their self-esteem will increase. I hope that makes sense. Next question. My child is getting bullied and I want them to learn to fight and not be afraid. Should I register them in jiu-jitsu? This is a good question, one that we get pretty often from parents of kids who do get bullied at school. Yes, your children are going to learn how to fight and control somebody who's being an aggressor, but that's not the point. That's not the purpose of putting them in jiu-jitsu. That shouldn't be your only focus. What we want for kids is to learn to walk away from a bad situation and be okay with it, and have enough confidence to walk away and be completely fine. and not second guess whether they deserved that kind of behavior or they deserve that kind of treatment from their bullies, right? We want them to be confident enough to walk away and learn that, you know what, it's not worth it. I'm just going to walk away. You know, I'm not going to stoop to your level, right? Kids don't, it's not something that you can just teach them. You can sit them down and tell them, you know, it's not worth it, or, you know, you just learn to walk away and learn to ignore them. That's not effective. So they have to be able to, yes, learn how to fight, but then also realize that it's better to walk away because they have enough confidence to walk away from a bad situation. But yes, if you want your kids to learn how to fight, yes, they are going to learn how to fight. But jiu-jitsu, you have to remember, is very defensive. So you can be on the offense and you can be controlling someone else. But once you put on a submission, you're not actually injuring them and you're not actually, causing them that much pain. You're just controlling them enough to get them to leave you alone. So again, depending also on the program and the academy that you're registering them in, they might have a different philosophy. In our academy, we follow a very structured curriculum. And so, you know, when it comes to bullying, we have a process. We have a very specific process that we follow. We get the kids to drill it over and over and over again. And a lot of times, self-defense, especially in a bully situation, you start with your mouth. You learn how to communicate. You learn how to verbalize what you're feeling and, you know, get into a safe distance, right? So distance management is something that we teach. And then the last resort is, you know, if somebody else puts their hands on you, and only when someone else puts their hands on you, that's when you're allowed to use your jiu-jitsu. That's when you're allowed to defend yourself, but you don't, you know, go looking for fights and that type of thing. So yes, jiu-jitsu will definitely help them. But again, the focus should be that you want your child to be confident enough to be able to walk away from a bad situation. Next question, do I need to compete or can I just be casual? Yeah, so we get this question a lot. So if you want to start jiu-jitsu, you don't have to be a competitor. You don't have to enter tournaments. If you just want to learn and just be casual and just do it for like a side activity, that's totally fine. Having said that, some academies are going to be more focused on competitions. So just make sure you ask those questions when you have your first trial class. Ask them what type of academy this is, right? What's the culture? Is it an expectation that they need to compete or do certain amount of competitions before they get promoted to their next belt, right? Those are questions that you should be asking the academy, but for the most part, not everyone in jiu-jitsu academies compete. It's a huge myth. Not everybody is there to compete. Not everyone's there to become a competitor. So yeah, hope that answers your question. Next question, do you find the jiu-jitsu community is inclusive? Do I find it to be inclusive? Inclusive to whom is what I would follow up with. But yeah, I would say it's pretty inclusive. I'm part of different networks, but of course I'm a business owner, so I look at it from like a business owner perspective. But you know, as a competitor, as a female, as a person of color, I would say it's pretty inclusive. I think people mainly will look at you and see you as a training partner as opposed to something else. Obviously, there's going to be some outliers, some schools that we've heard of that I will not mention that don't allow women to train, and so that's more specific to that school. I wouldn't say that represents the community as a whole. I would say as a whole it is pretty inclusive. When did you start jiu-jitsu? So I started jiu-jitsu in 2013. How do you train while on your period? I train just like I normally would. So I actually did a YouTube video on this topic. So yes, ladies who feel like they need to stop training because they're on your period, you don't need to do that. You can definitely continue training. You just have to wear the right stuff. So go check out my YouTube video. I talk about that in there. And I also talk about, you know, if you're breastfeeding or if you're pregnant or, you know, you have other girly issues, go check it out. Why should women do jiu-jitsu? I talk about this in my YouTube videos as well, but the number one reason why a woman should do jiu-jitsu is because it's fun or because you want to do it, right? I think there's there's always a common dialogue on women should be doing jiu-jitsu because they need to protect their bodies, because, you know, they need to learn self-defense. That's a side effect to learning jiu-jitsu. You will learn how to defend yourself for sure, 100%, but that's not the reason why women should do jiu-jitsu. Women should do jiu-jitsu because of why women should do jiu-jitsu. They should do it because it's just beneficial to their bodies and their brains, just like everyone else. So whether you're a guy or a girl or you're somewhere in between, everyone should be doing jiu-jitsu because it's fun, because there's mental health benefits, there's physical health benefits. You learn a different side of yourself that you didn't know you had. You tap into this area of your brain that hasn't really been activated yet, and you learn so much about how your body can do so much more, and you just really learn to love and appreciate what you have. So if you're a shorter person, you really appreciate your short limbs. If you're someone who's tall, you're gonna love playing spider guard, right? Like there's so many benefits to it. Check out my YouTube videos because I talk about this in detail there. Where am I? Have you ever had a disrespectful reaction from someone because you're a hijabi at the gym or a competition? This is a really good question. Thank you for asking. So for those of you who don't know, a hijabi is somebody who wears a hijab. So this thing that I've got on my head is called a hijab. Have I ever had a disrespectful reaction from someone because I'm a hijabi? I'm not gonna lie, yes, of course I have. That's just the way the world works, unfortunately. At a competition, no, I would say that I'm regarded as a competitor, and if people are looking at me, I probably am not noticing because I'm freaking out about my competition that's coming up. At my gym, I've had a lot of encounters, and this doesn't happen very often. It's probably like a few times a year, but I have had encounters where a person doesn't want to speak to me, they'd rather speak to the man in the room, or even a female. Like I've had this one woman come in and she was so rude to me. And when she spoke to my staff member, it was like a light switch. Like it was like night and day. She was so pleasant and happy and laughing and really pleasant with him. But as soon as like I entered the conversation, it was like, bam, she was just really rude and disrespectful. And my staff member actually noticed as well. So it's not something that I imagined. Yeah, people can be very rude at times because I don't know, for whatever reason. And what I normally tell myself is if someone's gonna be rude to you or disrespectful, that is a reflection of their personality. So if they're gonna show their true colors because of who you are or what you wear, what your gender is, that's their problem. Don't make their problem your problem. And that's a reflection of their personality. So if someone wants to be rude to me, you're showing everyone else in the room your personality. And if you want to show your true colors, so be it. I really don't care. I think also I'm in a huge place, a great place of privilege as well, because I'm a business owner. And I don't always like this aspect of it. I think a lot of times people, once they find out that, you know, my husband is our head instructor and we're the owners, I get a lot of respect because of that. And I find that a little bit annoying sometimes because I want to be known for myself. I don't want to be validated because of my husband and his accolades. Like I'd rather be validated for who I am. Not that I need validation in any sense, but I'm in a place of privilege. And so when, you know, I'm speaking to somebody and they find out I'm the owner, I'm the person in charge. It's very well known that I am the person in charge at my academy. There's a different level of respect there. And so what I wear and what my skin color is and who I am becomes completely irrelevant. So those are things that I don't really focus on. And I don't normally tell people that I'm the owner, my husband's the owner. Like a lot of people don't even know, and of course now I'm posting this on the internet, but a lot of people don't know that we're a married couple. And they find out like way later on and it's just funny to see their reaction. But my husband and I are very, very, very professional when we're in the academy, because we're not a mom and pop shop. We're not like doing this on the side. This is a very legit business. You know, we're very professional in the academy, and so if someone is being rude to me or disrespectful, I handle it in a very professional manner. So yeah, I mean, if people are going to be treating you like that, if you find that you're training at a place, regardless of what you wear, regardless of what your creed is or what your lifestyle is, if you are feeling disrespected in that space, then it's time to look for a new space, because you should feel happy and proud of the academy that you're representing. You should be happy going there and training there and coming home from there. You're investing your time, you're investing money into this place. So if you're feeling disrespected or unheard or whatever it is, then maybe it's time to look for a new academy. So I'm gonna leave the questions there and do a second video, because this is getting really long, and I will do a part 2, so check out part 2.